All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the weekly community race for Final Fantasy VI Worlds Collide Randomizer. I am here with my co host.
Hi, I'm Magri, excited for this race. You guys should be in for a good one. What do we have, Chuck's up?
And I'm Chuck's Up. I'll be commentating tonight. So, for this race, we have somewhat of a standard flag set with some interesting modifications to the flags. So, for those of you who may be new to this or aren't super familiar with Worlds Collide Randomizer, I will explain kind of what this entails. So, the Worlds Collide Randomizer takes essentially the game Final Fantasy VI and it randomizes certain aspects of the game to create what turns out to be about a 2 hour or less race that can be done between players synchronously or asynchronously. And what that entails is normally you start with about 3 to 4 characters. All the treasure chests have random items in them that would be not normally found in that chest. Shops are also randomized. The starting characters are randomized and their abilities are randomized. So kind of jumbles everything around in a way that makes every playthrough fresh and unique. And essentially, what we're doing tonight is there is an objective that will be to get 6 characters, 9 of the Magicite or Espers collected, and to kill 3 dragons. What this does is it unlocks the final dungeon called Kefka's Tower. It allows you to go and fight against Kefka, the final boss of the game.
Oh,
So
that
it
sounds
looks
great.
like we are getting things started pretty soon here. I don't have the stream up yet, but I will in just a second.
Yep.
And go ahead, Mog.
So our racers tonight are going to be Zelfer, Squack McQuack, Falcon Hit, and Javinator. We've got a lot of experience in this on this set of racers, so we should be in for a good one. I'm hoping to see some good strategies out of these folks. There are some unique objectives that are included in tonight's flag set that we'll talk through in a moment that are going to really influence their strategy, and I'm excited to see how that plays out.
Yeah, this should be interesting. I mean, I'm mostly well versed with what people call new standard or what we know as like the Ultros League flag set. And just after a quick kind of overview of these flags, it looks like a lot of that stuff in terms of like scaling and other things is pretty similar to that, but they've also seemed to have added in some kind of niche requirements that unlock certain things for the characters to give the runners kind of an option to go that route. So it looks like okay, we are getting started now.
Yeah, so our themselves with Shadow, Cyan, and Sabin as their first 3 characters. And in this seed, all 3 happen to have their normal abilities. So Shadow's going to have Throw, Sabin with Blitz, and Cyan with his Sword Tech ability. Our racers are probably mostly going to start out normally with a looting phase, trying to find some good items and maybe some good things to sell off for better items. But we see Javinator going and starting off on one of his objectives. Chuck's up. Why don't you go over what the special quests and objectives are in this seed?
All right. Well, it looks like there are 4 different special quests that can be completed. One of them, which Javinator appears to be doing right now, is Let Sid Die. And that requires him to look for certain types of fish to feed to Sid, who's in that little hut there. And once he feeds him enough of those fish, Sid will eventually die. And what that does is it's going to, as long as he completes these other 3 quests, one of them is perform in the opera in the opera house, which takes a considerable amount of time out of the out of your effort in running a speed run. Win a Coliseum match, which should be pretty quick, and to pass the security checkpoint, which also shouldn't take too long. But if he completes all 4 of those, all of his characters will have 60 vigor and 48 speed. So vigor, which is essentially strength in Final Fantasy VI, it's an important stat for the characters who are swinging a weapon, trying to get high physical damage. Speed, obviously, is just how fast that action bar fills up. So if you can get those done, that's going to add a significant boost to the characters.
Yeah, the flag set is really playing to the starting characters on purpose with that vigor boost. So that vigor or strength is going to help all of Shadow's throwing stars and physical weapon throws. It's going to help Saban's couple of blitzes that are based on physical power, like suplex and pummel, and then it's going to power up pretty much all of Cyan's sword techs, which is nearly all of them. So Javinator is gonna looks like he's taking the strategy of getting that vigor right from the start. These quests are going to take the same amount of time no matter when you do them in a seed, so he wants to go ahead and knock them out early and start with that initial power up, while all three of our other racers are starting as normal with a looting phase and just trying to get a baseline equipment and inventory set up.
And it looks like Zelfer just checked a monster in a box in Narsh there and quickly reset out. It was Gigantos, who can really be a good early experience boost for your characters, but at this point in the seed, Zelfer's probably just looking and deciding, you know, I don't have enough ability, power, equipment on my character right now to take out Gigantos, so maybe we'll see him revisit that in a little bit.
Yeah, peeking that Narsh monster in a box is becoming an increasingly popular strategy, I've noticed. It's good to know what's there with a save point right next to it, so it really only costs you a few seconds if you have to reset. Chuck, so that gives Zelfer some interesting information that our other racers don't have right now. That Gigantos fight is one of the best experience gains in the whole game, so maybe he comes back after he's progressed a little bit farther and increased the scaling of the monsters and bosses in this game, in this seed, so that he can get a big XP boost later on.
I've also noticed, I didn't catch this in the flags until I just see it now, but it looks like Y remove, Y NPC is set to remove, which means that the players, if they hit the Y button when standing in front of one of the NPCs or several other types of objects on the map, can actually just vanish out that object. So if there's an NPC that's blocking your path, you can tap Y to make that NPC go away. Also, an interesting thing about that is there's several checks that require you to pass through a door that you can only unlock. For example, in Zozo, you would need to have an item called Rust Rid and Cyan in your party in order to unlock that door to get to that area of Zozo, the Mount Zozo area, to do a couple different checks there. So with Y remove on, you actually do not need those requirements. So that's kind of something you want to consider in terms of deciding where you're going, how you're routing, and whether or not you need to have those characters to get to certain areas.
Yeah, absolutely. Y remove started as an April Fool's joke, and it quickly became a very popular flag because it unlocks the game in such a unique way. With this seed, we have Cyan from the start, so Mount Zozo is already open to our racers should they want to go there. But like you mentioned, they don't have to purchase that Rust Rid for 1,000 gil. But one of the other nice checks that it unlocks is the Magitech Factory. Normally you would have to have Celeste for that, and then there's some guards blocking your path until you find her. But you can just Y remove them and head on in and find yourself with some pretty awesome tunes.
I actually didn't know about that one. I know about the being able to pass them, the guards in Albrook. I knew about Locke's checks in Narsh in World of Ruin, but I did not know about the Magitech one, so I'm going to have to make a mental note of that and use that in my future runs.
Yeah, Y remove is pretty funny like that. There's a lot of things that you wouldn't expect to find, but sometimes there will be an NPC just blocking your way, like in Albrook in the World of Balance, and you can't get to the docks for that extra treasure chest. You can just go ahead and Y remove them if that's enabled.
Yeah, it looks like so far I do not see that anyone's actually completed a check besides Falcon Hit, who has one Magicite. Oh, and Squack also has one, but I didn't catch where they actually picked those up from.
Yeah, Falcon Hit is continuing to do his looting, and he found an Atma weapon in the Figaro basement, and it looks like both Zelfer and Squack will find that as well. We don't know if anyone can equip it yet, because equipment permissions work a little bit differently in Worlds Collide. So in this specific seed, I think we're going to have the standard plus 33%. So if a character could equip an item or a piece of armor in the vanilla game, they maintain that, and then if they couldn't, they have a 33% chance of being able to equip it in the seed.
That's right. Yeah, and it looks like that Phantom Esper was actually picked up in Gao's father's house, which is a free check that you can do right out the gate. Free meaning there's nothing standing in your way in terms of a boss battle or any kind of fixed encounters or anything in order to do the check.
Yeah, another type of check that our runners hope they don't encounter too often is what we call a dead check, and that would be when one of these checks does not reward a character or an Esper and instead rewards a high tier item. We call it a dead check because it doesn't progress you towards your final objectives. So one other thing that's interesting and different from our standard race flag is that dragons are required in this seed. So Chucks Up, if you're one of these racers and you see that 3 dragons are required before the final fight, where are you taking yours?
Well, I think the 2 obvious ones that kind of come to mind are going to be the dragon that's in Narsh, the top of Narsh in World of Ruin. And then the other one would be, for me at least, the one that's in the castle ruins on Edgar's check, Edgar's World of Ruin check, an ancient castle. And the reason that those are the 2 I would say like obvious ones is because in my experience those are fairly easy to route into your checks anyways. So if you're going to top of Narsh where there's a check where the Tritalk Esper is, and then after that, if you have Umaru, you can actually go down to his cave, and there's another check there for a possible character Esper or high tier item. So the dragon there is a pretty easy one to pick up on that route, and then kind of same thing goes for Edgar's. For the 3rd dragon, there's also one in the Opera House World of Ruin that I actually take that dragon almost every run, regardless of what the requirements are. And my thought there is dragons give a good amount of experience and a good amount of magic points. And so magic points, if you have an Esper equipped or a Magicite equipped, and it has a ability that it can teach you, you can quickly learn those abilities just by taking out a dragon. So typically what I'll do is towards the end of my run, before I go into Kefka Tower, I'll say, okay, I really want this character to learn Life 3, which is an important part of Final Kefka, or I really want this character to get Doom or X Zone or something that's going to help me in that final fight. And so I'll slap that Esper on that character and go do that dragon really quick. Also, just having a couple extra levels before going up against Kefka is always a bonus. And it really, the Opera House dragon, I don't feel like takes very long for what you actually get out of it. I feel like it's almost always worth doing. So for me, those would be the 3. The only thing that I would kind of vary from that would be if I don't have Edgar or Umaro, and I may want to instead kill, well, I guess the other one that I'm leaving out is Cyan. I'm sure these guys will all do Mount Zozo on this check, so that's going to be one for them. But if I didn't have Edgar or Umaro, those ones are a little out of the way, especially Edgar's. Actually, I don't even think you can go to Edgar's if you don't have him. I would then do one of the ones in Kefka's Tower, and I might even consider dropping into Kefka's Tower with all 3 of my characters, or all 4 of my characters in the far right party, clear out that first mini boss there, and then proceed on to kill the dragon, reset out, and then redistribute my party to make sure that I was able to get all the dragons, get all the experience I wanted to the characters I wanted, without having to go too far out of the way to do it.
Yeah, that's another strategy that's growing on me. I do like jumping into KT, just taking one party in, grabbing that dragon, and then heading back out. So To update a little bit on what our racers have been up to, it looks like Zelfer and Falconhead have started in on their Sabin checks. Zelfer is up in the Imperial camp, and Falconhead just completed the collapsing house check. Unfortunately, it was dead. He found a Genji armor. But there is a good reason to do these, and that's because there's another objective in this seed. And if you complete 3 specific Sabin checks, specifically Mount Colts, the Imperial camp that we see Zelfer at, and then the collapsing house check that Falcon had just completed, all 3 of those together is going to earn you 4 blitzes. So if you manage to get Sabin his first 4 blitzes and then complete that objective, you'll get the next 4 blitzes, which unlocks the almighty bum rush, the crown jewel of blitz.
Yeah, and that can be a really good ability if you have the, if you're able to get it without going too far out of the way. I just noticed too, looking at one of these trackers, that Falcon Hit did pick up the item off the Zen Thief, which sometimes Zen Thief is carrying a piece of Magicite, but other times they're just carrying a high tier item. And this time they were carrying a high tier item, which happened to be the EXP egg. So that is a really good item to get early, because what it does is it multiplies the experience that the character who has it equipped is receiving from each battle. So especially if you get one early on, you can really start ramping up the levels on that character. There are certain weapons in the game as well, that, like fixed dice, Atma weapon, that scale directly off of the level of your character. So having something like that on a character that's going to be swinging or throwing one of those weapons later in the game, if you start ramping their experience early in the game, you're really just setting them up to be just a really strong character by the time you get to the final dungeon.
Yeah, good find on that. And he did for sure find the Atma weapon, so I didn't see if anyone could equip it yet, but as soon as he has somebody in mind for that final offensive swinging the Atma weapon, I expect we'll find that character receiving that XP egg for the majority of the seed.
Mog, do you want to explain a little bit about why certain characters are able to use different weapons in Worlds Collide?
Yeah, so kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but if specifically in this seed, if a character could equip a weapon or a piece of equipment in the vanilla game, they maintain that ability. But as an additional random option, there's also a 33% chance, repeating of course, that they can equip it in this seed. So basically, 1/3 of your characters will be able to equip any given piece of item, any given piece of equipment, weapon or armor, even if they couldn't in the vanilla game. So you may see our racers jumping into the item menu, clicking on it for the details, and looking at what characters can equip it by name. Unfortunately, you have to have recruited the character in order to get that information. So if you just see a blank under characters that can equip it, that means that none of the characters equipped so far, none of the characters recruited so far can equip it. That doesn't mean that no characters of the whole potential list can.
Right, and when I look at those things, kind of what I take into consideration is if there's 2 different characters that I have that can both use the same item, my first thought is, who's going to hit harder with this thing? So typically, for a lot of weapons, not all weapons, but you're looking at Vigor as a stat to see who can hit the hardest with it. But then the second thing I have to consider is someone else going to be essentially useless to me if they're not using this? So a good example would be if you have Celeste in your party, and she has high magic and high vigor. But then you also have, let's say, Locke in your party, and he has really poor magic and okay vigor, maybe not as high as Celeste. My choice then would be, I need to put this weapon on Locke because he's going to be my physical guy, and I'm going to let Celeste just use that magic power to be my main caster. And so it's not always as straightforward as who has the bigger number on their stat sheet. A lot of times you kind of have to consider what else is going on with your party, and you want to make the most of every character, so you don't go through the seed with just one really strong character and a couple others who are just kind of along for the ride.
Absolutely, and I think that's an important distinction. All of our racers, as they progress through this seed, are going to be thinking about what does my offense look like right now, and what does it look like at the end game. Having some special objectives set up to enable both late blitzes and late sword techs that we'll talk about here in a moment. It means that Sabin and Cyan are set up to be endgame characters with endgame offense right from the start. You know there's a path available for them. So then, really, what you're trying to do is round out your team. And we see Javinator trying to round out his team with the speed and vigor bonus, and that's going to add Shadow in as that third, you know, final Kefka ready offense with the throw with the plus 60 vigor. And there he's picking up Shuriken right now, or maybe he's already purchased them. But with those available, he's going to have 3 characters dealing high physical damage, and he's just looking for that 4th character to round out his team.
So I just noticed in the chat, the real Chattius had said they like to kill at least one dragon. Nice to grind, might drop a high tier item, which is something that I actually neglected to mention when I was talking about the dragons. And that is that the dragons do drop items too, and it's not always the same item. It's a random high tier item, so it's kind of, I believe, it's the same items that you would get from doing a dead check. And
yes, that's correct.
Right. So there are times too where you're struggling for offense, don't really have any really good way to deal physical damage, and you end up getting something like an Illumina or a Ragnarok off of a dragon, which is can be super helpful. And there's when I played this game as a kid, I never really paid attention to the weapons, to be honest. I was looking at all the cool different magic abilities, and it just felt like, well, why would I use a weapon that hits one thing when I have all this magic and I can just power up all my magic characters and just kill everything in 1 or 2 hits, which makes sense for playing through the vanilla version of the game. But what I came to find when I started playing in the Worlds Collide randomizer was that being too reliant on magic doesn't really help you when you get to the final climb, which is the 4 phases of Kefka's tower at the very end. Because what tends to happen is that without being able to deal a large amount of damage in a short period of time, which magic just doesn't allow you to do, but physical weapons do allow you to do, you're going to start running into problems where you kind of start stalling out during that fight. So magic, for me, when I'm looking at the makeup of my party, I'm looking at what is good utility magic for removing or disabling certain bosses or phases of Final Kefka, and then also maybe some, a decent healing spell, and maybe some like ice or fire just to deal with resistances and bosses. But more importantly than high level magic, in my experience at least, has been those really heavy hitting items combined with the relevant espers that allow you to swing them multiple times or amplify their damage in some way.
Yeah, absolutely. Magic is certainly tempting because it seems so readily available, but with all of the Esper spells being randomized, you never know if it's going to be available at those highest and best spells. Now, Zelfer just completed the Barren Falls check, and he found a Carbuncle Esper, and that actually has Fire 3 on it, which is a pretty top tier spell. So if he finds himself a good caster, Fire 3 available early on is going to enable that magic damage, and that'll carry through all the way till the end as long as that character has enough magic power. Notice Squack McQuack is decursing that paladin, trying to decurse the cursed shield to find himself a paladin shield, or earn himself one. That's one of those things that's normally unlocked by lock, but with this the wire moon flag, he was able to bust down that door and go ahead and get it. I didn't catch how many fights are on it, but it must be low enough that he's tempted to do it, because that paladin shield is going to be just S tier defense throughout the whole game.
Yeah, my general rule of thumb with that when I'm playing a seed is I want to get it as early as I can, in order to make sure that my character is wielding it for as short amount of time as possible. because as you can see, Sabin, who's holding it puts a number of negative status effects on the character, and it also lowers a lot of the stats of the character rather than buffing them, and so it makes them easy to kill and uncontrollable. There are some ways to counter that. One thing would be to equip a ribbon on your character, which negates all negative status effects. So the only real bad status effect you get would be the condemned effect, which shouldn't tick anyways if you have, which is like an instant death effect that takes it instant deaths you over a certain period of time. Shouldn't really matter too much. But other than that, there's other ways to deal with it. One interesting way that I actually discovered recently in the Discord is equipping a heal rod onto the character, so that if they do happen to bash your own party, at least they're giving you a little heal with it. So there's ways to deal with decursing the shield, but generally, if I look at it and it's going to take too long and I got it too late, I just kind of say, okay, I'm not going to deal with the pain that it is to decurse this thing. I'm just going to set it aside and not worry about it. But if you can decurse it without causing yourself too much trouble, it is definitely worth doing, as it is one of the best shields in the game, if not the best shield in the game.
Yeah, that's a good distinction there. So, chat, if you got them, let's see your spicy chickens, because Falconhead has found himself a poltergeist and manages to defeat it on the way to the floating continent. Floating continent I really like right here. He's sitting at 3 characters and 3 espers. Floating continent is a combination of 3 checks in one, so both the first and third checks being guaranteed to have either a character or an esper. Cannot be dead, and he's found himself Edgar. Oh, that was too fast, I didn't catch the ability on him, but that'll open up his progression. Looks like Edgar also has Blitz. Oh, this is going to be interesting, because he now has 2 Blitz characters, and he's done 2 of the Sabin checks to progress towards that Learn 4 Blitzes objective reward. So he could have double Bum Rush coming up with the Figaro brothers there. That's pretty interesting. And as he progresses through the floating continent, there will be another boss fight that can be either an esper or an item. And then the final check will be either character or esper. No dead checks there. So he's going to look at coming out of this floating continent with 2, possibly 3 progression towards the final boss.
Yeah, that's a good amount of progress. And I definitely agree that if you have the ability to get Bum Rush on 2 characters, you should definitely do that, because that is going to be a very powerful tool. And I'm not sure exactly the time of the animation, but just from my recollection, I don't feel like it takes a super long amount of time to play out that animation as it does to other abilities that might do comparable damage that are magic abilities.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. It's one of the highest damage abilities in the game, and it just looks cool, right? So we've talked a little bit about getting Bum Rush on Sabin and for Edgar now. But there's also an objective where if you go and complete Cyan's Dream, you will earn yourself 4 sword techs. So if one of our racers notices that, they have the option to go do, through level ups, teach Cyan his first 4 sword techs, and then go complete the Dome of Dream to learn the last 4. And those last 2 in particular, Sword Tech 7 and 8, are really the ones that you're looking for. Sword Tech 7 is going to be that high tier damage in Quadra Slice, and then Sword Tech 8 is the cleave option for the instant death of any monster on screen, including some bosses that are vulnerable to it.
Yeah, I'm actually a little surprised that we haven't seen anyone do the Dome of Dream yet. That's something that I usually tend to do right after I do the Dome of Siege, just because you don't have to fly very far. You just switch over to World of Ruin. Anytime, this isn't just me learning, deciding this. This is stuff that I've learned from watching people or hearing from, people who are much more experienced than I do in running these seeds, is that anytime you have those kind of triple checks, and what I mean by that is where you kind of go through a path and you're going to hit 1, 2, 3 checks all kind of in a row with that are unlocked by a single character. So an example of that is the Dome of Dream, unlocked by Cyan, Floating Continent, which Falcon Hit is doing right now, which is unlocked by Shadow, or the Magitech Factory, unlocked by Celeste. That those are really high efficiency kind of checks, because you don't have to spend a lot of time moving across the map to get from one place to another, and you don't have to spend a lot of time thinking about, you know, what's next. It's kind of, they're more of like a linear sequence. So in my experience, those are sometimes, you know, the best things to do, just if you don't want to think too hard about what's next. So like I said, I'm a little surprised that no one's done that, the Dome of Dream yet, especially considering Cyan is one of the starting characters that unlocks it and also has sword tech on it.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'd like to talk a little bit about the divergence in our racers' approach to the seed, which I find really interesting. So we've got Zelfer, Squack, and Falconhit taking kind of similar strategies, which is traditional racing. And then we've got Javinator, who started off with all of those quests to boost his characters, and now he's gonna, before even doing any checks, he's going and doing the Mount Zozo Dragon to knock off that first dragon, get his characters some levels before looking at progress. But we've got Zelfer, Squack, and Falconhit just kind of progressing and heading towards the finish line. Javinator's really taking his time to power up all of his characters, get a level boost before tackling those objectives. And it'll be interesting to watch him as he progresses through the seed to see if he can catch up and at what point he catches up and leapfrogs past a couple of the other racers.
Yeah, I agree that is he did take a very interesting approach. And you know, I've heard other racers talk about this before, and I think it was Hefe that was telling me this, that he said his strategy differs based on who he's racing. So if he's racing against other guys that he knows are experienced, he's willing to take some more risky plays in terms of his routing to create more divergence between him and the other racers. And it makes sense. You know, it's also, I think, the difference of if you're playing in a single race like this versus like a league setting. Like if you're doing the Ultros League, maybe you're going to take things a little bit safer. You want to keep your times at a good average. You're racing against 6 people around your skill level. You don't want to do anything too crazy. But in a situation like this, where it's kind of a, you know, winner takes all, if you will, I could see why Jav would maybe do something that's a little bit unorthodox in his run, trying to see, you know, whether or not that pays off by doing something that he probably knew that he would be, you know, the only racer going that route. I'd have to imagine.
Yeah, and reading the flags and kind of cracking the nut or cracking the seed open by deciphering those is very key in Worlds Collide, and it's one of the things that keeps it interesting, because there are literally infinite possibilities of how you can set up the scaling, the randomness, the requirements, the objectives, and additional quests for any flag set.
Did you notice that Zelfer just suplexed the train?
I did not see. I missed it. I was about to announce the train, but why don't you tell us why that's significant?
So that gives auto haste to his party, which means that his party just now has haste from now on, I'm assuming. I've never actually, I don't think I've ever seen that in a flag set that I've played before.
Yeah, that's right. So auto haste is going to mean that every character is going to start with haste from the start of battle, and that's not only these current characters, it's all future characters. It also cannot be dispelled, so this is permanent haste on every one of those characters. And that's going to mean that Zelfer is just going to get that many more turns against bosses. He can lock them out, he can, you know, gang up on a boss with each character getting, you know, 2 attacks to the boss's 1, and it should really increase the power of his team just by having that much more speed.
And that requirement or quest isn't something you can ever really decide, hey, I'm going to go for that. That's just something that, you know, you happen to have a character with Blitz which they all knew they would start with a character with Blitz, but also that you just happen to run into the train because obviously since this is a randomizer, you have no idea where Phantom Train's going to end up, and you might not even run into Phantom Train. So it's
Yeah,
kind of a luck thing, right?
and interesting to note that he found the Phantom Train inside the Magitech factory, normally unlocked by Celeste, but available to Zelfer. You know, paying attention to those flags and knowing that Y remove is on, and he can get himself into the Magitech factory at any time with that Y remove flag.
Oh, and it looks like Zelfer is going to be struggling a little bit with Goddess here. I think I noticed the first blitz they used happened to be Aura which I believe heals Goddess. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, Aurabolt is that holy or pearl magic element, which Goddess is not only immune to, but absorbs, so it does heal her. And then I think what happened there was Umaro got love tokened and ended up doing a body slam onto. I think that's the Sabin character sprite up there. We've got some random sprites going on, but I like the way they look.
That it, yeah, the Isla from Chrono Trigger is Sabin. Oh, and this looks like a really tough fight that Zelfer's having right now. I hope he figures out a way to pull it out. But if I was in this situation, yeah, I would be sweating a little bit, to be honest with you.
Yeah, you really can get sucked into thinking that you have to defeat every boss, but sometimes the correct racing strategy is to just reset the game, go back to your last save point, and avoid that boss entirely, which it looks like Zelfer is doing right now. He should have some warp stones available. I believe they all started with him, and so he can warp right out of Magitech Factory and just go a different direction now that he's got that suplex a train objective done.
Yeah, something that I have had to kind of reconcile with myself when racing is, and I know this just doesn't just apply to video game racing, but also just life and investing in different things. Is like the sunken cost fallacy, where you tend to believe that because you've invested so much time, energy, money, whatever into doing something, that you have to see it through because how could you not when you've already put so much resources into something? But the reality is sometimes you just have to cut your losses, and that applies to this game a lot of the time. If you're doing a randomizer and you've spent all this time going through an area, looting, doing whatever you were doing to get to a boss fight, and that boss is going, you realize right when you start fighting it, this is going to take a lot to kill, and I may not kill it. So the smart strategy a lot of times is, rather than just trying to push past and force through it, you may need to just cut your losses and run back, because there's a good chance that one of the people you're racing against ran into the same thing. And if you decide you want to just keep pressing on and they decide to double back, and that pressing on mentality doesn't pay off, you're really just hurting yourself by doing that. So it's hard to know when it's happening, but it's definitely a skill that I'm trying to get better at, is recognizing when something is a lost cause, and just knowing, okay, this isn't good, but it's worse to keep pushing towards something that I'm not going to be able to defeat. So
Yeah, well said. So Falcon Hit is capitalizing on that XP egg for sure that we mentioned earlier. He had it on Shadow from the start, and Shadow's already level 35 as opposed to the 28 of the rest of the crew there. And he decided it was time to rotate, and he's got Sabin down there swinging double Atma weapons. He found a second one off of a dragon, and he picked up a Genji glove along the line. So Sabin's going to be doing a lot of damage.
it looks like Squack decided to go for the little side quest boost as well, as we see him doing what he can to make sure Sid dies here.
Yeah, and for our viewers, it's important to note that you have to complete all four quests. You don't get anything doing one of them. So you have to let Sid die. You have to perform in the opera. You have to get that auction house win,
And
and
then
you
the
also have to
security
pass
check.
Yes, thank you. The security checkpoint in Narsh. So if they don't complete all four, it's just some sunken time. But if you do complete all four, you're going to get a huge boost out of that.
Yeah, and this was something that, for me, at least this part of it that Squack's doing right now with catching the fish. When I played this game the first time, back in probably 1996, and then the countless times that I replayed it since then, I had no idea that there was any difference in the fish that you fed to Sid and whether you could actually save him or let him die. He died every time for me. And I just thought that that's just what happens. You can't save Sid. You feed him fish and he dies. And that was just part of the game. It wasn't until I started doing this randomizer a couple months ago and I saw this as one of the side quests, let Sid die or save Sid, that I was like, wait, you can save Sid. So poor Sid
Yeah.
on my cartridge just kept dying to me feeding him bad fish. And from what I understand now, it's the speed of the fish, right? So like the faster fish are the ones you want to feed to him if you want him to survive, and it's the slow fish that you want to give to him if you want him to die.
Yeah, that's exactly correct. So those fast fish are going to give him like a stat boost essentially, or add to his life total, and the medium fish are going to add just a tiny bit, but the slow fish are actually going to subtract from his life total. So you can choose to not feed him any fish, and he will die in about 2 minutes, or you can feed him the slow fish and try to speed that up, which is what Squack's attempting to do. But he will perish on his own if you do nothing.
And Falcon Hit's doing the long, long walk back to the airship, which I think is probably the longest walk you have to do on the world map in Worlds Collide. After you go through that cave and complete all of Edgar's checks, it seems like forever having to walk across the desert, get back to the airship there.
Yeah, it certainly does feel like that. And now we see him going for the Doma Dream finally. So he's really setting himself up to take advantage of all of that endgame offense that we talked about from the start. You know, it was prepped with the early Cyan with sword tech. He's going to go make sure that he has access to those last 4 sword techs at the completion of these 3 checks. It's also a very efficient 3 checks, as you were mentioning earlier. So Falcon Hit definitely is off to the early lead, and we'll see if Javinator can catch up. Zelfer and Squack McQuack, both with 4 characters, but with 4 and 7 Magicite respectively. Let's not forget that each of our racers needs to complete 3 dragons before they can take on the final boss, and everyone has 1 dragon so far, with the exception of Zelfer, who is about to go do that right now.
Yeah, if I had to just make a prediction now on who I think is quote unquote ahead in this seed, or I guess more of where would I like to be right now, to be honest, I would have to say Squack, just for the fact that he's got 7 of 9 Magicite, and from my experience in playing, Magicite are always, to me, just feel so pesky sometimes to find. Like, I feel like a lot of the times I'll be running and I get a character-rich seed where I have no problem getting to 6 characters, but it's just like finding those last couple Magicite that seem to be really time-consuming. And so just based on that, I would say he's in a really good position right now.
Maybe in terms of progression he is, but he's found himself up against a Doom Dragon in the Colosseum, which is one of the toughest mobs you can fight. These guys can be particularly nasty. They can freeze your character, or they can do exactly what I was afraid of in casting Fallen One and setting your character down to 1 HP. So Umaro's going to have to get out of this fight quick, otherwise it's not going to end well for him.
Yeah, and so he just has to complete 1 Colosseum fight, right? So it doesn't really matter which one, but he has no way of knowing which enemy he's going to face until he actually takes the fight, right?
Yeah, that's correct. He can see the item menu, so he knows what he's betting for. But yep, that's tough. I anticipate he'll just reset and try a different item. Yep, so he's got the whole list there. He knows that anything with Elixir is going to be a bad one, because that means Chupon is just going to come sneeze you away. Oh, and he did choose one of them, so there comes the sneeze. And he'll have to go choose another menu item and hopefully find a good item that he likes. You can see he's checking on his objectives there. But Chupon is definitely not going to let you win that Coliseum fight.
Oh, and he just said, forget it. Unless he's going to use the free heal on the airship, I'm not sure. No, it looks like he's just saying he's given up on the Coliseum for now, at least.
Yeah, that's a bit of a bummer because he did invest all that time in the Let Sid Die objective. Kind of like I mentioned earlier, it's all or nothing on these quests for that 60 vigor and 48 or 50 speed.
Yeah, 48.
Yeah, we saw the divergence there, and Squack is kind of somewhat committing. Oh, looks like he's going to go to the Opera House and come back to the Coliseum later. So he hasn't abandoned the checks. He's just going on to a different one. But Javanator knocking all those out at the beginning, taking about 10, 15 minutes or so, and just knocking that out means that he's done. He doesn't have to think about it later, and he can just play the rest of the seed pretty much as normal.
Yeah, and one thing I don't know if we mentioned or not was the unlocking the Kefka Tower skip, which only one of these two conditions is required to do this, and that's you either get 9 characters or 12 espers, and so that's 3 more characters over the requirement just to unlock Final Kefka, or 3 more espers over the requirement to unlock Final Kefka, but you only need one of those 2 things. You don't need both. So the skip is always kind of an interesting thing to look at when you're running a seed, particularly because it's tempting to go for a lot of times, especially when you only need 1 more of those conditions you need to meet. So if you're at 8 characters or 11 espers, and you think, oh, I can just get this last one really easily, which in some cases you can, in other cases you can't. You just end up sinking a lot of time into trying to find that last piece for the skip. But what that actually does, it does save a considerable amount of time. I don't know the exact number of minutes. Mog, do you know how much on average you would save during a skip?
Yeah, so the way the KT skip works is that if you choose to use it, your party gets to enter Kefka's Tower at the statue fight, which is the penultimate fights right before Final Kefka, rather than entering at the bottom and having to do this entire run through the tower. Now, the actual running time through KT is roughly 4.5 minutes, sometimes 5 if you like to go for those extra treasure chests. But in addition to the 4.5 or 5 minutes of running, there's also an extra boss fight that's mandatory. That's called the Inferno spot, because it's where the boss Inferno is in vanilla Final Fantasy VI. So you're going to save yourself a considerable amount of time, somewhere in the order of 4, 5, 6 minutes of running and boss fights. And we've seen that leapfrog some racers in front of others. So it's a great catch-up mechanism if luck doesn't go your way when you're trying to find your characters and espers throughout the seed.
Yeah, my experience with this skip is what I've learned from going for it is it's never really worth going for it unless it's very easy. It's one of those things that's more of a balance, like you said. Like it's a catch up. So if you got bad luck and you happen to just get a ton of character checks and you didn't get your espers till later, at least you don't have to spend that extra time going through the tower. Something that I noticed here checking out the chat is that it looks like the chat noticed this, we didn't notice it, that sneeze in the Coliseum actually counted for a win. And that's perhaps what Squack McQuack was checking when he went to his tracker to see whether or not that box was ticked or not. And so I haven't verified it yet, but according to chat, it looks like that getting sneezed out of the Coliseum counts as a win for whatever reason.
That makes sense, and that makes sense why he checked it in his tracker and then left. Unfortunately, did not catch that because he is pretty fast on those menus. But thank you, chat, for catching that. And what a play by Squack to realize that the sneeze did count as a win.
Yeah, I would not have thought that, but I guess it does.
So Falcon Hit has decided to take advantage of having Terra recruited, and he's going to go to the treasure room. This is always on the mind of any racer who finds Terra because there's so much available. It's the highest density treasure in the entire game. Looks like he's found a Thunder Rod, a Super Ball, just a couple of good consumables. Nothing too game breaking yet, but if he chooses to, there is a considerable number of treasure chests inside the sealed gate chest. So that the Thunder Shield is a pretty good haul. Always good to have that elemental protection, plus it'll teach the Bolt 2 spell. But he's sitting here with 5 characters and 9 espers. He only needs 1 more character and 2 dragons to be ready for Final Kefka, and there are 2 dragons in Kefka's tower. So he is just right on the cusp of being ready to go. If you're in his shoes, what checks are you looking for right now?
Well, so I'd have to think about it for a second, to be honest. You know, what I would be thinking about is that right now the check he's doing now in Sealed Cave is potentially going to be it can be all 3. It can be a character, it can be an esper, or it could be a dead check. So this is not a bad one to do. Also, as you mentioned, you know, all the treasure that's littered around here, although it does appear that Falcon is doing it in a way where he's not really concerned about the treasure. With this check, or this route right here, there's some variants you can do to it. There's a number of treasures here that are kind of out of the way. So like that one on the left that he just walked past, right? Like that's a little out of the way. Even that one I would normally pick up, but you know, he also just skipped the whole room that has like 4 or 5 treasures. So he's really just not even concerned about items or treasures right now, besides the really quick ones. He's going just right for the check here. So, you know, I think Falcon's probably thinking about, oh, and there you go. And so besides the dragons, he's going to have the 6 characters and the 9 espers that he needs for the unlock. So, you know, I've raced against Falcon before. I always see Falcon's times, and I always wonder, how the heck is he so much faster than everyone else? And then when you actually watch him run, you see why. And it's because he does very little in his movement, in his routing, in his decisions that is wasteful. He is like a true speedrunner in my mind. Not that these other guys aren't, but Falcon just seems to always be focused on getting that fastest time possible, and being as you know, not wasting any of his time in the run to get where he needs to go. So, and it looks like now he's going to go for the Opera House Dragon. So that's just going to put him 1 dragon out from being done with his progression.
Yeah, and I think that discipline is very commendable. It's very tempting to just grab every treasure chest you find. You never know when it's going to be an Illumina or a Ragnarok. That's what they say. Every treasure chest you don't open is an Illumina. But he knows that he's got a team that's ready for endgame offense. He's got 2 blitzers, he's got sword tech, and he's got a throw character that's had an XPA from the start. So he's got the offense. There are diminishing returns in treasure chests. The more you check, the less value they get on an expected basis. So having the discipline to pass by all of those treasures is gonna just add that much more time every time he passes one up. You know, those seconds here and there really add up. So Falcon Hit takes out the Opera House Dragon. He'll get his item reward here in a moment, but that leaves him with only 1 more dragon to enter the final battle in Kefka's Tower. He is allowed to enter Kefka's Tower on his own, and there are 2 dragons in there, so we may see him going in and doing that. Checking in on some of our other racers, Javinator is all the way up to 4 characters and 8 espers, so he has made a lot of progress towards catching up. Squack McQuack has 4 characters and 7 espers, and Zelfer with 4 characters and 6 espers. So still a competitive race going here all along, as Javinator finds his 5th character, and Falcon Hit goes ahead into Kefka's Tower.
Yeah, this is a pretty... I don't think I've ever been in Kefka's Tower at 50 minutes. This is very impressive by Falcon Hit to get here that quickly. So he's looking at a good time right now. And considering, you know, everyone else is fairly behind in terms of progression on him, you know, he's in a really good spot right now. And it really just comes down to whether he can get through the tower and get through the final phase without having any hiccups. But as you asked me earlier, I realized I didn't really fully answer that question on where would I go now. Obviously now he's got his progression done, but let's say he didn't get that character in Sealed Cave and he had to make a decision. One thing that I'm really trying to work on myself in my runs is if I just need an Esper, to take a second and look at what checks I have available to me and only do ones that won't award me a character. So, for example, try Talk at Top of Narsh, World of Ruin. It can either be a dead check or it can give you an Esper. And I feel like that's a much better play if that's all that you need. I don't believe there's any checks that can only be characters. I'm trying to think. No, I don't think there's any checks that can only be characters. So, that would be one if that's all I needed. Another place I'd like to go towards the end if I know I need something is where Javinator's at right now, actually, which is the cave in the Veldt in World of Ruin, one of Shadow's checks. The reason being is because this room he's walking into right now, Javinator, he sees that guy on the ground, and that means that is not I'm actually surprised that he's actually going to keep going, because seeing that sprite laying on the ground, that means that's not a character, that's not an Esper, that is a dead check. So maybe Jav is hoping that it's a high tier item, a weapon of some sort. But that basically, what I would do there is I would just reset out, because I know this isn't going to give me any progression. So that's considered like a peekable check. So I like peekable checks. Sorry, someone's driving a motorcycle very quickly by my house. I like doing the peekable checks like that one, like Phantom Train, which I know takes a little longer, but it's a check where you can see what you're going to get before you commit more time into doing the check. So as I get towards the end, I actually try to, and this is something I believe Jeremy Arroyo taught me, is when you get towards the end, you kind of want to save some of those peekable checks for the end, because that helps you not waste time doing checks that you don't know what the reward's going to be.
Yeah, and speaking of that, we see Squack McQuack taking on the third stage of Magitech Factory. We call that MTech 3. And that check is what we call a guaranteed progression check. So this cannot be a dead check. It's guaranteed to be either an Esper or a character. And it looks like he's in the perfect situation to take that, because he needs both characters and Espers. This is a fairly long check, but the fact that it's guaranteed, to me, adds a lot of value to it. It means that he's not going to be wasting any time on a dead check, and he's guaranteed to progress in the game. So we'll see what he gets at the end of his long train ride, but we know that it will be progress towards the end goal.
That's true. Yeah, the Magitech Factory, up until a couple weeks ago, whenever I entered there, I would just run through the whole thing, because that's just what I thought you did when you went into Magitech Factory. And I believe it was actually Falcon Hit that was mentoring me on a run that said, just do Magitech 1 and 2 and warp out. And I was like, what are you talking about? He goes, yeah, after you do the second 5 Magitech, just use a warp stone. And I'm like, I didn't even know you could do that. And so I definitely learned from that, and I may actually be overusing it, because like you said, that last check is guaranteed progression. Also, there's a chance that you warp out of there, and that character that's gating you for the rest of the run is actually at the end of that train, and you just warped out without getting without getting that character. So I haven't run into that problem yet. I'm crossing my fingers that I don't run into it, because that would be the worst, warping out of there, doing my other checks, not finding that other character who's going to open up more checks for me, then having to go back all the way through the Magitech Factory and doing the train ride, and everything just to get that character would just, that would be really, really frustrating. So like I said, luckily I haven't run into that yet, but I know it is a risk you take if you decide to warp out after using a warp stone after doing the first 2 checks there.
Yeah, and speaking of going back into Magitech Factory, we see Zelf for taking a second dip inside. He's gonna go and try to get some revenge on Goddess, and hopefully that works out well for him because it's worked out for Swag. He found an Esper there, and
Yeah, it looks like.
Falcon.
Go ahead.
Falcon Hit is setting up to hit the final switches and take on those statue spot bosses. So as we mentioned earlier, the KT skip would drop you in right here. This is the exact spot. If any of our racers were to earn that, but it doesn't look like that's likely today. And let's see what Falcon's first statue boss is at the Guardian location.
Yeah, and it's Hydon. So this boss, if there's sometimes they have a flag set where you can actually Hydon is considered undead, and so you can just use a Revivify Phoenix down to kill him. Most of the time in standard flag sets and in this flag set, they have a box tick that says undead bosses false, and so which means none of the bosses are undead, so you can't just easily kill them. But it looks like, I don't think it's going to pose too much of a problem to him. It looks like he's got a lot of damage going through here with that Genji Glove Atma weapon setup, which is really nice against a boss like that. The reason being, Offering, which is one of the other really good relics you can pair with an Atma weapon, it makes it so when you swing in a regular fight command, you swing 4 times. The only problem is you don't get to choose your target. So the character will randomly attack any of the targets on the screen any number of times. And so when you get a multi-boss battle like that, sometimes it doesn't work out in your favor because your character will just start swinging randomly at things you don't want him to hit. And the problem with that happening in that last fight against Hydon is that if you kill all of his little Hydonite minions, he becomes significantly stronger. And it's really not a good place to be, especially in the situation where you're trying to race against someone, you're trying to finish up a seed really quick, and all of a sudden you run into a boss like that without a efficient way to deal with it. But yeah, this Genji Glove. It's actually, yeah, two ammo weapon Genji Glove setup. It's a really strong setup. The animation's really quick. You don't run the risk, I guess, which can sometimes be a benefit in certain cases, of a weapon like Illumina or Ragnarok, which has Illumina with the Pearl proc, Ragnarok with the Flare proc. Really good additional procs to those weapons on top of the MP crit that they can do. But there's times when the amount of damage you're getting from that Pearl or from that Flare proc is just really not worth the amount of time that the animation takes. You'd rather just be casting Fire 3 with another character or swinging with another character. There's certain times when you get that proc and you're like, oh man, I didn't really want the proc. I'll take it because it's damage. Didn't really want it. And of course, there's times when you don't want the proc because there's certain bosses that will actually heal, especially in the case of Illumina. And so, in my book, I think Atma weapon, that dual Atma weapon with the Genji Glove, that's got to be one of the most sought after weapon combos in the game. The only thing you really have to be conscious of there is because Atma weapon will do a reduced amount of damage if your character is missing any percentage of health. You do have to keep that character topped off all the time, which typically isn't too bad of a problem. But it's something that you just want to keep in mind to make sure you don't queue up an attack with that guy and then all of a sudden he gets back for 3,000 damage and then he's hitting for 30% of his max damage.
Yeah, that's something I'm always conscious of. You can get caught in a trap where your Atma weapon user is taking a bunch of damage, and then you're just stuck in this healing loop where you're not ever attacking, you're just constantly trying to keep them topped off. My favorite method is to give them a paladin shield if you have them available, but I don't think that many of our racers invested the time to do that. I know we saw Squack do it, and I thought one more might have, but I did not notice Falcon Hit try to decurse that shield. So that's one option that's not available.
Yeah, and now we got Falcon in the Stooges fight, which is can be a difficult fight at times. It's one of those fights that can be kind of deceiving in how difficult it is. The Stooges, one of the tricks to knowing how to handle them is that the color of pants that they're wearing is the type of magic that they absorb. And so fire absorption on the one that's on the top floating, ice on the back left one, and lightning on the front right one. So you want to make sure whenever you're casting that you're casting the appropriate magic on the right one. Also, the one on the back left, he can be killed with instant death, X zone, any kind of removal will just take care of him. The only thing you want to keep in mind there, though, too, is that and here comes a delta hit, which is going to turn one of these guys into stone. Yeah, that's a little scary when you see that happen. And we'll see how Falcon decides to deal with this. But the only problem with doing the quick removal on the bottom left guy is that a lot of times what will happen is the top one will just revive him. And so typically there is a kill order here with the Three Stooges, and that's you want to kill the top one first, and then you want to kill the bottom right one. And then sometimes the guy on the back left will just actually run away and escape once the other two are dead.
And that comes right back to what you were saying earlier about having the targeted damage. You know, Sortec 7 Quadra Slice is one of Cyan's best abilities, but it hits random characters, and if you can't target down that curly stooge at the top, he's just going to cast Life 2 on any of the others that you kill, and you're right back at the start of your fight. So now that Curly's gone, he's going to use that Sortec 8 Cleave and instant death Larry away, and then take on the last stooge on one.
Now, do you think, I didn't catch what items Falcon had, or if he even looked through them, do you think he just doesn't have a soft or a remedy, and that's why he's leaving Mog as a stone? Or do you think he just figures, nah, I don't need Mog right now?
I'd be very surprised if he didn't have a soft, but he was running a little bit of a risk in not giving him that soft and you know, unpetrifying him, because those Three Stooges, when all three are up, they can cast Delta Hit again and turn Cyan to stone, and that would end the fight as a loss, so that would be considered a wipe. That's one of the things that makes Kefka Tower particularly difficult, is that you don't have your entire party there. So if Cyan had been solo and that Petrify attack hit him, that Delta hit, he would have just essentially wiped there. Thankfully that didn't happen though, and he beats that statue, finds himself a save point, and at 104.19 he hits the final switches to start the final Kefka battle. This is a 4-tiered fight. Chucks Up, can you walk us through what Falcon Hit's going to encounter in each of those 4 tiers?
Sure. So the first tier is going to be primarily physical damage that you have to worry about. Any character who's in the front row, that's the characters move forward. Although they're going to be doing more damage if they are doing physical attacks, they're also going to take a lot more damage from that first phase. And so there's a particular order that you want to deal with this phase in, and you really want to make sure that your characters are healed up before you do the final strike. The worst thing that could happen here in the first phase is one of your characters gets taken out and the phase ends, in which case that character can't re-enter the battle. So you're then stuck with your backups. So you can see there, he picked his top 4 characters. He's going to go into the fight here. If any of them do die and don't make it to the next phase, you will get a replacement, but generally your replacements aren't going to do a whole lot. And you can see he's casting Fire Through on the head, which makes sense. The head's vulnerable to fire, and that's the one you want to take out first. The long arm, which is the one closest to us, the one you can see more of the arm, that's vulnerable to that attack right there, which is instant death. So that arm's gone now. The next thing he's going to do is take out that head, and then finally the short arm. The reason you take out the head before the short arm is because the head has a hard counter of Quake. So when the head dies, if it's the last thing to die, it'll cast Quake on your party. which is a really high damaging ability that you can only really dodge if you have your party floating in the air. So that's phase 1. Phase 2, I guess we'll kind of go over it more once we get to it. But you're also going to want to have similar style of disabling abilities. There's 4 different parts to phase 2. As we go up here, there's going to be the back part, which is a magic casting, kind of a disabling status effect, kind of a magic type of a guy, which can be muted. So if you either have the mute spell or you have an Esper like Siren that can mute him, that's really good to do off the bat. Then you have Tools, which is the one in the middle, which casts a bunch of Magitech style stuff, which can be also killed by any kind of instant death thing like that sword tech that Cyan had used earlier. You have Lion on the bottom, which is just kind of a magic damaging caster. And then I'm not sure what you call the guy on the front. Hit, man, whatever. It's a dude that hits you really hard. He mostly just does all physical attacks. And so my kill order here is going to be instant death gears in the middle, or tools, and then silence the dude in the back. Use ice, which the lion is going to be more vulnerable to, or any kind of physical attacks. And then kill the dude in the front, which will trigger 10 hit, which hits each of your party members or a random party member. He'll do it 10 times, and so it's just, a series of physical attacks. And then after that, generally you want to heal up, finish off the dude in the back, who should be silenced. So pretty straightforward, as long as you have all the necessary removal or silencing effects that you need to get through this phase.
Yeah, easier said than done though, because a lot of the bosses on tier 2 can have some nasty status effects. They can inflict zombie status, they can inflict muddle, they can freeze you, they can silence you, they can turn you into an imp. They do nasty AoE damage, and here comes that 10 hits that can take out one of your characters if you get unlucky in the ordering of who those hits go to. But Falcon Hit is making quick work of this final battle. Looks like he's got a little bit to go in tier 2 here, and then he'll find himself in tier 3. Tier 3 is going to be no joke either. It's only two enemies, but they have some very key components that you have to pay attention to. First is going to be the girl on the left absorbs every element, and then Sleep, which will be on the right, is going to cast some nasty counterattacks once his HP gets low, and we'll go over that in a moment because he's not quite done with tier 2.
Yeah, as you said, the status effect stuff that happens in tier 2, the worst, I think, of them being Zombify, especially if you have no way to deal with it. I've had Setzer with 2 fixed dice offering, Genji Glove offering, double fixed dice get Zombified before, and just roll dice into my entire party and just kill everyone. And it happened just like that, and there was nothing I could do about it. So for me, that phase can definitely be deceivingly easy at times, and other times just devastating.
Alright, so here Falcon Hit has moved on to tier 3. As I mentioned, Girl in the back is vulnerable to only non-elemental and physical attacks. She will absorb every element. So she is the priority kill. She has 9999 HP. And once she's done and no longer able to heal both of them, only Sleep is left. And Sleep isn't too scary at the start. He's got about 40,000 HP. And after you've dealt 30,000 damage to him, approximately, he's going to start countering with both Media, which is a high damage, low chance to hit spell, or Train, which is going to cause the blind and mute status effects on your entire party. So it's pretty nasty, and that's not all he's got though, because once you finally kill him, he's going to cast Calmness either once or twice, and that's an instant death physical attack. And unless you have a way to negate that, you will be losing a character. It looks like he's going to try to use the Phantom Esper to negate Calmness. Juxup, can you explain how Calmness works and interacts with Phantom?
Sure. So as long as he doesn't get hit well, here we go. So it's just going to miss. As long as he didn't get hit by Meteor before, which would remove the Phantom effect from the characters, Calmness is just going to miss. There's other ways to deal with Calmness as well. Phantom's probably one of the best ones. Phantom or Fenrir, I think, are probably the best ones. Sometimes you just get lucky and your guy blocks it, or it misses you because you have a Zephyr Cape or some other form of evasion on. But yeah, Calmness can be one of those things that even if you plan everything out, you have protection for it, you're ready for it. If you don't do your math perfectly, you don't get the burst damage that you're expecting, it can take out your best character, and then you're stuck fighting this guy with your main guy down. So final Kefka now. Generally, the strategy here is to do as much damage as you can, as quickly as you can, up to about 30k, because I believe he has 64k total. And so right now, Falcon Hit's probably doing a little bit of math, trying to get as much as he can into him. And then Kefka will typically, when he gets to about half health, he'll use Fallen One, which puts all your characters at 1 HP. Mega Elixir comes in very handy here. Hyperdrive, really strong attack that he'll use. And right now he's charging up for Goner. So that means he's about at half health, or maybe even less. And so now what Falcon Hit's going to do is break a Thunder Shield, do as much damage as he can. He really wants to try to kill Kefka before Kefka uses Goner on him. Even if Kefka gets Goner off, I don't think it's going to be enough to kill both Shadow and Sabin. And there we go. Kefka is down. Falcon Hit with the crack at 112 and about 25, I think. GG's in chat for Falcon, guys. That was a very impressive a run by him.
And a very impressive final Kefka fight. Between all 4 tiers, it took him just about 8 minutes, including the cutscene and menu time to start the fight. So very fast. He put that experience egg and high tier offense to very good use throughout the entire final battle. And he earned himself a race win. Let's see if we can get him in here for a racer interview while we check in on some of our other racers.
Yeah, Mog, if you want to go ahead and message him, I'll take a look at what everyone else has got going on. So Squack, oof, 13 Espers and 5 characters. So Squack is really struggling to get that 6th character right now. Looks like he's doing the Burning House, which is one of everyone's least favorite checks, Strago check, just because it takes so long. There's so many of these little pesky flame encounters you have to deal with in here. No one really likes doing this check. And so I feel for Squack right now, trying to just doing whatever he can to find that 6th character to continue his progression. Zelfer looks like in a similar position here. And, you know, Jav is clearly heading towards 2nd place right now, being the only one who's gotten enough progression done to be in Kefka's tower ready for the final fight. So as long as nothing goes wrong, it looks like Jav should be closing this one out with 2nd place here at any moment. But we have Falcon Hit here. Welcome, Falcon. GG's,
Hello.
man.
And
Thank you.
GG.
Wow, I'm seeing a lot of Strago and Umaro. Where were those two?
I'd
Yeah.
have to look back at my notes to tell you, but I think Umaro was one of Cyan's checks.
Oh,
Yeah, that's right.
The
So-
Dome Siege.
Umaro was at Doma Siege, and Strago was at Mount Colts, I believe.
I see.
A
Okay.
couple of checks that you didn't choose to do. So what I wanted to ask you about is your approach to the seed. We were trying to keep track of 4 at the same time, but it seems like you ran this as a fairly straightforward standard or ultra sleek flag set. When you reviewed the flags, what was your approach to the seed?
I noticed off the well, you start with Throw Shadow, right, with 100 to 125% stats, so that's like your entry into the seed. Because scrolls, their skins are always going to just like deal millions of damage, no matter what. Even if you're at like high, like my initial thought process was I have to get started at around 5 or 6 characters Esmer's Dragons, because that's when they're about level 15, and at 15 you've got a very high chance of getting hit by tier 3 elemental scaling, which is not good. You will die immediately. So around level 5 is where I wanted to start. And yeah, I noticed the seed because Sabin, because your starting characters had their original abilities, right? They're very
Right.
physical. So my approach to the seed is to get as many levels as possible. I intentionally didn't remove any of the bosses because I wanted to get as many levels as possible. And with the experience being 2.5, you're probably going to end up around 44, even without this experience egg.
Yeah,
If
that
you hit
experience
every
egg was a
boss.
lucky early pickup for you, and you put it to great use on Shadow early on. So you weren't tempted at all by any of the special objectives to get that extra vigor, or go hunting for some of those quests.
I'd love to get the extra vigor, but doing the opera is literally 4 minutes. And that is... It's like not worth it. It's like the difference between... I mean, you saw it the final fight, right? Because I was using double Atma. It would have been like... I would have been doing quad 9s instead of 9,000 damage. It's just like, it's not worthwhile, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, great decision on your on your part. Your final Kefka battle was right around 8 minutes, so great job there. You were definitely putting that offense to work. Didn't notice any bum rushes. What was your thought process on that?
I like never use bum rush. I like barely know the commands for bum rush, so I was like, oh, I'm not gonna bother with those blitzes.
Oh, well, before the next race, you should let me know because I have a little sticky note here with all the bum rush commands on it, and I keep that next to me whenever I play because I can't remember them either.
It's left, left, up, up, right, right, down, down, left, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So, early floating continent, you were the only one to do it early. We talked about how it's 2 guaranteed progression and a possibility of 3 progression. Is that something you normally go to, or was it just the right check at the right time today?
I think I've done this flag set before, and normally I always just go floating continent because, um, what am I trying to say? I want the level boost because this seed had so many plus 100% health espers. It was actually insane. All of my characters were so healthy. Scaling with HP is like something that I don't really like doing because it's just like defense, and in my opinion, Final Fantasy 6 World Flight is not a defensive game. But I didn't have to carry about a defense at all because all my characters had like 5k health. It's kind of funny. But yeah, I just used that. My characters weren't dying, so I just I need to get much experience as possible. This leads back to the experience because Flint Continent is a lot of experience, right? An alternative move that I like to do is break into Magitech Factory because it's very similar, except it doesn't have the guaranteed progression. Or to me, those two series of checks are very similar, except Magitech Factory might be slightly worse because you don't get the one of the guaranteed progression. One of them could be like it could be double item and then guaranteed, right? So I guess you get the benefit where when you're doing like the series of fixed encounters, you get more experience because you've done the 2 checks prior. Whereas Floating Continent is the reverse, right? You get the fixed encounters first, and then you get the very fast double bosses at the end. So there's like some give and take there.
Yeah, well, I think it was very successful for you. In however much I was able to pay attention to you, it seemed to really accelerate you. So you put that experience to great use, and that experience egg certainly helped. Have any final thoughts before we say goodbye tonight?
I'm really glad that Kefka 3 did nothing after I used Phantom. Otherwise, I was going to be eating a Meteo.
Yeah, it did look a little bit early, but you were doing so much damage that you were able to take him out. So, yeah, good job on that one. Amazing run. 112 is insanely fast. So, GG, and thanks for racing and letting us watch tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Falcon.
All right, if you haven't already, please go follow our racers Falcon Hit and also Javinator, Squack McQuack, and Zelfer, putting on a great show for us tonight. Looks like Javinator is progressing through KT, and Squack is going to be taking advantage of that KT skip.
Yeah, so that will be interesting to see how much time that actually saves. Because these two right now, it looks like they're fairly close. I have to be honest, I haven't been watching watching too closely when we were talking to Falcon there, but yeah, it looks like they're both in a similar position right now. I think what's going to really determine whether or not one finishes in front of the other is just how they happen to handle the upcoming bosses, how they have their parties divided up. Squack, I'm not sure what he's trying to go up the wrong way on that escalator. Oh, I see. He didn't open the doors for the other guys. Is that what happened?
So Squack
going...
actually never finished his third dragon, so he had to go back down and get the third one. When you do the KT skip, you don't have to hit that switch to open the doors. That was what I thought initially, but then noticing the tracker was one short on the dragons means that he's not ready to go. So he's gonna have to take up this blue dragon, and then it'll be on to Final Kefka.
Yeah, it looks like maybe he didn't realize at first that he hadn't done the third dragon, which looks like it's no problem right there. Where he's got Saban swinging for all nines with the Atma weapon. So yeah, Squack definitely doing a lot of damage, and he, like I said, that's just a little bit of bad luck. I feel like him getting 13, and Zelfer in the same position now too, finally getting his 6th character here. There's no way to predict which of these checks are going to have an Esper or which are going to have a character, and so a lot of it just comes down to making an educated guess and going a certain direction. But at the same time, like I said, something I'm really trying to work on is making sure that I'm only doing checks that are going to have what I need from them, which in this case, if he had done some checks that maybe had the option to give him a character as well, he wouldn't be in the position that he's in with so many Espers.
Yeah, I think it can be a really difficult thing to know when to switch from I'm just going to do the most efficient check next to I need to change gears and focus on either only Esper checks or keep plugging along and where you think you're most likely to find your next character. It's definitely an art and not one that I've got down, but that KT skip is going to give him a big benefit, and it almost caught him up to Javinator. So we see Javinator just about to enter Final Kefka right now at about 123.40 or so. Also a very fast time. Don't let Falcon Hit's amazing performance take anything away from Javinator.
No, I mean I'm at the point where anything under 140, I'm extremely happy with, and so yeah, I mean I just know looking at Falcon Hit and comparing myself to him is just it's not doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because he is definitely in that elite tier, being able to finish seeds super quick, like making standard seeds look like jet seeds in a way. But yeah, I mean, getting to where Jav and Squack are right now at the time that they're at, this is not, by any means an easy feat. Like they didn't get perfect checks. They struggled a little bit to find what they needed to get here. But either way, this is they're making quick work of this, and I commend them for having a good of a time as they did. Zelfer as well, who now is just looking like they finished Floating Continent, and they're going to be getting into their KT skip as well. So yeah, all 4 of the racers tonight have actually done a very good job. It looks like Zelfer though is going to be doing a little shopping possibly. Can't think of what they feel like they don't have at this point.
Yeah, but Javinator's thankfully giving us a little performance with the bum rush there on that lower right screen. Nice to see that, and you do see it easily hits over 9,000 damage. Bum rush is just one of those amazing abilities, and it makes quick work of Tier 1 of Final Kefka. Moving on to Tier 2, he's going to be watching out again for those status effects, trying to get that instant death damage off on the tools enemy, and trying to keep his party healthy leading into Tier 3.
So you may notice on Jav's screen that the coloring, the graphics, everything looks a little bit different as it does from, like, if you compare it to Squax that's like directly above. And that's, I actually asked Jav about this earlier this week, and Jav plays on a actual SNES console, and he streams through a capture device, and that capture device has some software options built in where you can increase the color intensity and smoothness of textures that are being streamed. So if you notice that his graphics there don't look as pixelated, and the colors tend to pop out a little bit more, that's the reason for that, is the setup that he's got going, which, you know, I would love to play on the classic console, which I have. I just don't have the setup to do actual streaming. And then I believe you have to have a cartridge that goes into the SNES, and then it can hold a little flash drive, and so it takes a little bit more in terms of being able to run like a randomizer or different kind of custom ROMs on it, because you have to have all those kind of accessories. But definitely for the purists, it's the way to go.
Looks like Squack's got a message for chat. We'll have to stand by for a moment to see what it's going to be, but he's taking advantage of those rename cards that all of our racers received, and momentarily he'll have something for us. Chat is very... I think I know what's coming. I don't know if chat knows what's coming, but he's got one more to go. Chat is very... Pog, of course. So get your Pogs out if you got them, and watch Squack heading into Final Kefka.
That's pretty hilarious. That is definitely a Squack thing to do. I noticed as I was chatting away there, Jav looked like he got into a little bit of trouble there on phase 2, but seems to have gotten out of it now. He used, I think it's called Manta Wave or Mantra, something like that. Saban's Healing Blitz. I don't know the name very well because I don't think I've ever used it before.
Yeah, that's right. In Vanilla and in Worlds Collide, it's called Mantra. And what it's going to do is going to take the current health of the caster and divide that by the number of people it's healing. So Saban having 5,000 health gives a fairly healthy heal to the rest of the team. It'll also remove some nasty status effects like Mute and Poison. So having two characters with Blitz and having that Mantra available with high HP is a nice tool to have in the tool bag going into this pretty tough fight.
Yeah, that's something I definitely should utilize more when I have a blitzer in my group. Generally, when I have a guy with blitz, I use him for pummel early, then Aura Bolt, and then I kind of forget about him. So something that I need to do is kind of think about, you know, what other utility blitz provides besides just that kind of early single target damage that I usually rely on it for.
Yeah, that Mantra is particularly helpful in both Tier 3 and Tier 4 because they can cast Mute. So if you're relying on magical offense, Blitz can't be muted, so the Blitzer can unmute all the rest of the team and save a lot of time, you know, not having to cast remedies or echo screens to bring your party back to normal status.
Oof, and Squack just got hit by that quake there and lost Fairy. So chat is not very Pog anymore. Chat's just going to be some other kind of Pog, it looks like, going to the next phase. That's the danger of using certain attacks on that first phase, is if you're not selective about who you're dealing damage to and you happen to kill that head last, without floating, you're going to eat a quake, and that is a lot of damage to take.
Alright, we've got an update. Chat is now Setzer Pog. I'm not sure that's as good as Very Pog, but it's still Pog. That's he was able to save the Paladin shield though, so good for him on that one. That should help provide some good defense for the rest of this fight. Javinator's here on Tier 3 trying to stabilize and get his Calmness protection up, so he's got the Fenrir Esper. Fenrir is going to cast the image status on the entire party, giving them super high evasion and making it so that they can dodge that final Comus attack. There's that train, and we were mentioning that earlier. It's going to cast both blind or darkness and mute on the entire party. So look for an early mantra as soon as he's able to, in order to get that restore out and unmute all his party.
And you can see how fast all of the bars are going on Jav's screen down there, and that's because he, I believe he completed that speed bonus quest. I'm not sure if he got the auto haste one too, which if he did, you know, that's going to make his bars going faster, but you can just see how much impact that has on his battle bars and how quickly they're filling up, how many more turns he gets between the enemy getting their turns. So that's definitely a big advantage here. Another thing that a lot of more experienced racers will do is called weight tricking, which is halting the progress of the enemy bar during animation. It halts your own progress too. And the way to do that is if you enter any one of the menus at the magic menu or the item menu during an animation, like what's happening right now on Jav's screen, no one's progress bars or their attack bars will fill up. It'll all just stop. And so what that can do is during those long animations, you can actually save yourself from eating attacks from the enemies by using that technique that we call weight tricking. It's something that if you're struggling against some of these fights, especially with Final Kefka, you know, I highly recommend watching some videos on it or just practicing it a little bit. And it is a serious game changer. If it's something that you're not doing and you're struggling, definitely something you want to check out and start implementing into your runs.
Yeah, well said. That is one of those advanced tactics that all of our racers are taking advantage of, and it does make a very large difference. Now, earlier I told you to watch out for a mantra to cure the mute status, but that's completely unnecessary because Blitz, Sword Tech, and Throw are completely unaffected by being blind or muted. And Javinator knows that, and he is just going to move on and deal away as much damage as possible to Final Kefka.
Yeah, and here we go. Jav done 133.09. GG Jav.
GG.
As Squack just is now starting off on the Final Kefka fight, and Zelfer is just now getting into the tower.
Yeah, I didn't get a time hack on when Squack began this fight, but he seems to be moving very quickly through the Final Kefka battle. He made up some ground against Javinator, but Javinator entered just far enough ahead to be able to get that crack bang or crack pow before Squack could.
And it looks like Chat is basically Chat just one-shot Kefka there with the I believe it's offering and offering Genji Glove and 2 Atma weapons there, doing 9999 every swing. That's enough to just kill Kefka in one attack, and so that's part of why Squack was able to just cruise through that last part.
Wow, what an ending. Very, very close finish between Squack and Javinator. And in fact, let's welcome Javinator into chat. Hey Jav, GG, well done.
Thank you.
All right, so this was a fun seed, and we saw you take a unique approach to it. You saw those objectives. What was your thought process, and what did you want to get done?
So I was thinking, you know, it's a community seed. I actually never do those objectives normally, so I thought, oh, what the heck, let's do the objectives. Should be fun. And then, you know, I saw that I would unlock the sword techs and I would unlock the blitzes. So I was like, okay, well, I'll just fight some stuff early, and then I'll just go do those checks right away to get that stuff, and then I'll basically be set for the seed after that. So that was sort of the plan.
Yeah, did you notice a power level increase when you completed those objectives?
Oh, big time, right? Like, Cyan was weaker than I was expecting, to be honest. It took a while for him to get going and being useful, even with that big vigor bonus. Not having any Atlas armlets or hero rings, though, was a big part of that. But yeah, once you get like bum rush, you're killing stuff. That massive vigor for the shurikens was really good, and once I found that strength plus 2 Esper and experience eggs and stuff, like people just took way off.
Yeah, we also noticed that we couldn't keep track of your ATB bars because they were filling up so fast in the final fight that you just always had character abilities available.
Yeah. Especially Shadow, he was going crazy fast. So that was pretty fun.
All right, so any other thoughts on the seed? Like, did you like it? Was it just wacky and zany? Do you have any issues with it?
It was fun. I would really be interested to see how that would have gone if I went Floating Continent early and didn't do my character hunt at the end and had a Blitz user right from the start. That would have been a different seed, I think. That way, and then when I went and did Floating Continent, I was like, I'll just take the last 2 checks because if I get super lucky, I get the skip. So I didn't, but it was fun anyway.
Yeah, Falcon Hit was the only one who did the early Floating Continent, and it did pay off for him, finding that good character. Umaro was a lot of people's 4th character. Of course, he's not going to add a whole lot of help. There seem to be definitely 2 different paths here of one, chasing the objectives to power up your characters versus just kind of proceed as normal and treat it like any standard seed. What
I would
else
say
did you have out of this one?
Well, I was gonna say, like, while I did the objectives for fun, in a seed like this, especially knowing you're gonna have Sword Tech and Blitz, it is not the right play. If you want to go, like, if you want to win the race, it is not the right play. But it was a fun seed. Like, it was cool to have an excuse to do those things and get a reward and feel really powerful right till the end. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's the first thing I thought when I saw the flags. I was like, how fun would it be to have, Sword Tech and throw and add on that 60 vigor from the start. So cool. Thanks for demoing that for us. You went in right away and did it, and Squack ended up doing it later. But thanks for the run, GG. Well done. And do you have any final thoughts before we say goodnight?
Nope, just thanks to the Restream team. These things couldn't happen without you guys, so very much appreciated. Thanks very much.
Yeah, cool. Well said. So thanks, Javinator. And
thanks, Jav.
Our Restream team is doing an amazing job, so thank you to Franklin, and thank you to our tracker in Ceiling Cat doing all the stuff behind the scenes to enable this. With that, let's welcome in Squack McQuack. Hey, GG, Squack.
GG's. That was really fun. I'm glad that somebody else also did the stuff with the Opera House and all that stuff.
Yeah, the objectives. And
I was like, man, no one else is gonna do this. If I don't do it, who's gonna do it? So I'm glad that somebody else at least did do it. I did it for the sake of giving chat something different to watch.
Yeah, we appreciate that.
You gave me free rename cards. I've got to rename my cast at the end of the fight. I mean, there are some people who really wanted to go fast, but I was doing this I was just having fun.
Did you know that Chupon sneezing at you would complete the objective for the arena?
Yes.
How did you know that?
So I picked that up the last time I did a community race, and I think that was like a week and a half to 2 weeks ago. And I was trying to do it. I didn't know how to do the Opera House thing, so I didn't do that one. But when I was doing everything else, I was trying to get one complete, and I'm like, damn, I can't believe I can't beat one of these fights. And I looked at my tracker to see what else I had to do in that objective pile, and I was like, oh wait, sneezing makes it a win. So yeah, I took that and I remembered that. So
that's interesting. It must just be something with not dying at the end of the fight.
Sneezing counts as the enemy basically, like, pushing you away and going, you win, go away, right? Like that's that's Chupon's death animation, is sneezing at you for you to go away, and that counts as a victory. That's the victory sequence. So I guess the game counts that as a win.
Yeah, I was surprised.
Yeah, that's a trick a little tiny trick to remember. It doesn't come in handy very often, but when it does, it sneaks up on people. I just checked my tracker to double check to make sure that trick still worked, and it did. So I got consistency out of the trick with just pick the thing that gives you an elixir. It's gonna be Chupon, like 9 times out of 10, and then just let him sneeze at you. Then you get the win.
Well, very heads up play, and bravo for remembering that and executing it. What were your general impressions of the seed? We saw how you approached it, but what were your thoughts?
I didn't really know what to do. I knew when I was checking the flags, I knew there was no Super Balls anywhere to be found in stores. Like the Super Ball flag was set to no, so you weren't gonna find any Super Balls. So I was kind of weary on trying to check too many free checks at the start, because that's usually my go-to thing. I just do all the free checks when you can, when you know they're gonna be characters or espers. So I was trying to do that a little bit, and I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to keep continuing because the scaling set to 2.5. I was kind of flip-flopping at the beginning, not really knowing where I wanted to start. But I was like, you know what, whatever. I'll just do all the free checks, and I'll hit up Imperial Camp and pray to God that they're going to be easy-ish enemies, and they were. I mean, you just threw Revivifies at the beginning enemies and just got free experience for it. So I was able to stabilize off that and just push forward. And finding the experience egg early off of Send Thief was like huge. Sabin, you saw at the end there, Sabin just kind of swung at everything and killed everything. Like each stage of Kefka was killed by Sabin alone, pretty much.
Yeah, you were doing massive damage on Final Kefka. You started it a little bit behind Javanier, but you nearly caught up to him. If there was a 5th tier of Final Kefka, you may have done it. So that was pretty awesome.
I lost a lot of time on my rename cards.
Yeah, you might have tied or been very close to it if you hadn't done that. But
I was in it for the fun. I wanted to give chat. I always think it's fun to give chat something new to watch, something a little different. A runner who does quirky little things. So that was my goal for this run. It wasn't so much to win, but to give a little bit of entertainment value to the chat. So I hope that worked. I hope I got some laughs out of them.
were you feeling any level of frustration when you were at a point with 5 characters, and I believe it was like 10, 11, 12 espers, or is your thought at that point just, well, heck, at least I get the skip. I just need to find that one character and I'm go mode?
Well, I think there was a little bit of frustration, I guess, mainly because I just wanted to like get to Final Kefka and start swinging Sabin. I just wanted to see Sabin one cycle Kefka, which I ended up doing, but I was like, oh man, if it's not in Burning House, I've got to go to Floating Continent, and I really don't want to go to Floating Continent this late. But luckily, Burning House was set, so I'm like, oh, thank God.
Yeah, I think when I saw you, go. Well, I think I mentioned when you went to Burning House, I was thinking, no one goes to Burning House this late and is happy about it. It's like a desperation move.
Very true. I really didn't want to go in there, but I'm glad that it at least bore some fruit, so I was able to get into Final Kefka. And then I was like, and then I got up there and I didn't do my last dragon. I was so focused on that last character, I forgot my last dragon, so I had to go all the way back and do my dragon.
Well, I was like, wondering, yeah, because I wasn't paying attention to your tracker either, so I was going, well, what's he doing here? Why is he going back down that conveyor belt? I was like, I didn't understand, and then Magre pointed out, oh, he needs another dragon. Oh my gosh, he hadn't done that yet.
Yeah, it was really funny. I've never had that happen before, but I'm like, oh yeah, I guess I didn't, because I was gonna go to Opera House before I went to Final Kefka, but I didn't end up doing that because I'm like, oh, perfect, Final Kefka, just go, like let's get in there. But luckily, you are able, when you do a skip, you are able to do the backtrack with any party you want. Well, the middle party anyway. And the middle party is usually your strongest, so I had no problem with Sabin just killing whoever was there and then moving on.
So how do you get back down that thing though? That's what I was wondering, is how do you backtrack?
Retouch the switches, like move off with your characters and move back on. And when you re-tap the switches, the stairs open back up.
Oh, it undoes the little staircase. Oh, okay, got it.
And your middle party can go back down and exit on whichever side they want, the left or right, and you can just fight either one of the dragons.
Cool.
Okay, well, thanks for coming in, Squack. Any final thoughts before we say goodnight?
No, no, not at all. Great job, guys, on commentating. Thank you, Restream team, for doing what you do. And this was really fun. And I hope I gave the chat some laughs. And GG to everybody.
Awesome. GG. Thanks,
Yeah,
Squack.
GG Squack, thank you. Well, it
Awesome.
looks like
GG. Thanks,
Zelfer
Squack.
GG Squack, thank you, has forfeited. So I think that does it for the race tonight. We had some really exciting stuff happen. I had a great time watching it. Had a great time commentating with you, Magre. Again, yeah, thanks for the Restream team. Thanks everyone for doing what you do. If any of you are not already part of the community, we definitely welcome you in. And anyone who is interested in playing Worlds Collide, there's a ton of great resources out there for it. It looks like we're joined by Zelfer right now, so we'll do a quick interview with Zelfer before we wrap things up. Zelfer, how did you feel about that run? Are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I got you now. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Ugh.
Ugh. Well, specifically, was there anything about the flag set, about the seed, or anything that gave you, more ugh than other things?
At one point, by the end of it, I was 13-5 before I found Edgar on Floating Continent.
Yeah.
And the entire time, I'm like, all right, find the last character. Don't forget Opera House Dragon. Find the last character. Don't forget Opera House Dragon. I got so focused on finding that last character, I forgot about Opera House Dragon. Got all the way up KT with the skip, and got knocked back. I'm like, wait, crap, Opera House Dragon.
Squack, actually, we just got done interviewing Squack, and Squack did the exact same thing. He got there and he had to do a reset on the button so he could walk back down part of the tower and kill one of the dragons there, which I didn't even know you could do. But apparently that's something that you can do. You can reset the little bridge thing, and
really?
And he had to do that to get that last dragon. Yeah.
Oh, I wish I had known that.
Yeah. But I understand your frustration. I could kind of read it in both you and Squack, who got the skip, not because you were going for the skip, but just because you couldn't help but find anything but espers towards the end when you just needed that sixth character.
Yep.
And I've been in that position before. You had to actually go Floating Continent. I believe Squack found it in Burning House. But yeah, I get that. It's you got to go do a long check like Floating Continent when you just need one thing out of it, and it's not a fun place to be in.
And then you add to that, all right, I'm finally getting all right, I'm going through. All right, I've got 2 people with Blitz. I've got Bum Rush. All right, steamroll first boss, steamroll second boss. All right, reset. Steamroll Inferno, steamroll second boss, or first statue. Get to the next statue, steamroll that one. Last one, I have Cyan and Amaro against the Stooges, and Cyan gets petrified.
Yeah.
That's that. At that point, I'm like, you know what? I'm just giving this up as a bad job.
Kind of sums it up. Yeah, that's tough. In terms of, I saw you didn't go for any of the bonus objectives. What was your thought there in deciding just to forgo those?
So, I did go for the Blitz objectives kind of later than I would have probably should have, but for the other ones, I really didn't. I wasn't gonna do Opera House without, or I wasn't gonna do the opera without Cella's anyway. At least I don't think you can do it without her. And by that point, I already had double Atma offering. I had I had one person with Blitz already. I had Cyan just for the cleanup for long arm and tools, and by the time I was at that point, I'm like, anybody I find, they're just going in the party just because, especially to get her, because I sat on Amaro for so long. They're just going in the party just to get rid of Amaro. And by that point, I'm like, this is already a strong team. This will walk through Final Kefka. And then, yeah, you saw my tower.
Yeah, sometimes you just, it's a luck of the draw kind of a thing, and not everything goes your way. But hey, it was a good run. You had fun, right?
Oh yeah, no, there was a lot of fun, interesting stuff in that one. The flag set was interesting. I'm not having every Esper be available to everyone. It's something I haven't done before, so that was fun too.
Yeah, that can always be a little tricky when you're not used to it. Well, hey, thanks, Zelfer, for stopping in. Thanks for the race. Appreciate the run and the feedback, and hopefully we'll see you again on here.
Oh yeah, always a pleasure. I love doing these.
Thanks.
Cool. All right. Well, we are wrapping everything up now. Thank you, everyone, for watching the stream. We appreciate everyone in the community, including the Restream team, the tracker, everyone here that helped make this possible, all the racers. As I said before, the Worlds Collide community is a really awesome community, totally noob friendly for all the people who are interested in joining. We have a tournament that we're doing here shortly, which is a tournament where you're going to be running a seed with a mentor. And so if you're interested in something like that, something you want to sign up for, all the information you need is found at FF6WC.com. That is the official page for Worlds Collide, FF6WC.com. All the links you need are here in the Twitch channel. There's a ton of resources there. There's a wiki, there's guides. You can join the Discord. You can do races. You can ask questions. You can connect with other members of the community. It's really a ton of resources, and it's a really fun time, for everyone involved. And I highly encourage, if you have any interest in it or any questions you have, come ask questions, jump in, and someone will be happy to help you. So, Magre, thanks a lot for joining me.
Hey, thank you, and thanks to everybody chatting, watching, racing, and making this event happen. Really appreciate it. Love the community. Like you said, ff6wc.com to get involved, join the Discord, and we'll see you around. And if you'd like, stick around as we raid one of our other community racers.
Yeah, it looks like we're going to go raid Wef Jebster right now, is what it's sounding like. So stick around for that. We're going to go check him out. He's playing Final Fantasy VI right now as well. And so we'll go raid him and stick around for more. All right, guys. Thanks a lot. Have a good night, y'all.